My name is David Murray. I am the principal bassist of the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra, and I am filling in this evening for Matthew Kramer as your host. I would also like to introduce our featured artists this evening. One of them is Pam Ajango, who is also in the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra. She plays second oboe and is also a faculty colleague of mine because we both teach here at Butler University. Our other featured artist this evening is composer Matthew Bridgham, and I would like each of them to just talk a little bit about themselves and then maybe fill you in on how they came together. Pam.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, David. We're really happy to be here. Like David said, my name is Pam Ajango. I'm an Indianapolis native. Grew up here and lived out east for 10 years, went to college in Boston and New York, and decided in 2002 to move back closer to my family. And that is the same year I started playing with the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra. I was lucky that they had an opening at that time. I've taught at many universities, but Butler is my home now, which I'm very happy about, and David is my colleague. And I play oboe, I play the English horn, which I'll show you behind me in a bit. I met Matthew, our other guest, when he was a student at University of Indianapolis, where I served on faculty for a number of years as well. I thought he was super talented at both piano and composition when I met him as an undergrad, and we've been working together ever since. So I'll let Matthew tell you a little bit about himself.
Great. Yes, so I was actually born and raised here in Indianapolis, went to University of Indianapolis for my undergrad, spent about 5 years there, and then in 2013 I moved to Michigan where I did a master's degree in music composition at the University of Michigan. And I am still technically a student, about 5 years in now at Yale University, but I do not need to be there. So I decided to move back home and reconnect with people. So I did that last summer. And so I've just been teaching and performing around town and writing a lot of music. Even with COVID, my wife and I started a nonprofit, which is being launched next month with a benefit concert and a soft launch of our website called Pitch In. And we are educating and performing new music for people around Indiana, and we're focusing on Indiana musicians and Indiana composers. So more on that in the future.
Maybe, Matthew, some of your music will be featured when we play again at the Contemporary Music Festival in Terre Haute. The Chamber Orchestra has been doing that for about 13 or 14 years now. So hopefully we can do that. Do you both want to talk, maybe Matthew, you can start talking about the music that we're going to hear this evening. We have a couple of different clips, so you want to set this first one up for us, please?
Yeah, sure. So Pam and I first worked together on a smaller piece for a trio setup, piano, oboe, and violin, when I was at UND, and that definitely served as a basis for this piece, which I ended up writing in Michigan at the request of Pam. So I wrote this series of variations for oboe, bassoon, and piano, which is an ensemble that there's some pieces, surprisingly, some well-known ones like Andre Previn.
Poulenc.
And Poulenc, right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of like the wind's response to the standard piano trio setup. And so Pam, as she says, and it's true, gave me my first paid commission to write this piece of music. And
it wasn't enough, Matthew. It wasn't enough.
It was plenty. It was plenty, especially at that time. I mean, I didn't really have a infrastructure set up or anything, so. But we ended up performing it at UND. We premiered it there, and then the following year we went to the Double Reed Society convention. I forget what year that was. 2016.
2016. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we did it there as well. So the clip that we have here is the opening, which is the theme that the piece is built around, and the first variation of variations from 2015. Cool.
Was absolutely beautiful and delightful. Thank you. So I'd like to, first of all, ask Pam about the oboe. We don't get to see it close up from the audience standpoint. Usually if you're at a concert, you see the strings in front of the stage, but here's a chance to really see the oboe up close and personal. So what can you tell us about it? And I know we have a piece coming up that's written for English horn. So can you tell us the difference between the oboe and the English horn?
That's right, David. So they're both members of the oboe family. We have a lot of different sizes of oboes, but these are the two most common ones, which would be the oboe and the English horn, which is behind me. You might be able to see the size difference. So, and you'll notice that there's a little difference on the top. Both of these are called double reeds, which means that there are two reeds that vibrate together. And the bassoon, which you just heard, is also in the double reed family. And there's also a contrabassoon. But the two instruments, the oboe is a treble instrument, so it's kind of is the soprano voice, sits next to the flute in the orchestra, is one of the oldest woodwind instruments, and really the heyday of the oboe was the Baroque period. So I'm going to play a little clip, just 4 measures of a piece by Telemann, which is actually a flute fantasy, but many different instruments play it, just to show you what the oboe sounds like versus the English horn. So it's a very high voice, you know, not as high as the flute or piccolo, but definitely in the top register. And it's very distinctive sounding in the orchestra. So it's very easy to pick out that sound. And we actually, that's one of the reasons we play the tuning note at the beginning of every orchestra concert. The concertmaster walks out, takes a bow, and you'll hear a sound, the note A. And that comes from the oboe player who's sitting smack dab in the middle of the orchestra. And also the sound can be heard even when the whole orchestra is playing. And then this is the English horn. So it's much bigger. I know it's hard to kind of see, but kind of goes on forever. It's a little bit heavier. And it is pitched, for those of you who are musicians, 5 steps lower than the oboe. The oboe is in the key of C. The English horn is in the key of F. But we still read in the treble clef range. So here's the same clip just to hear how it sounds different on the English horn. play both of these instruments. I have since high school, actually, where I attended North Central High School, had an English horn. I was very lucky because they had one, and I had the experience of playing that in the youth orchestras in town. Played it in undergraduate, graduate school in New York City, and many pit orchestras on Broadway. And I mean, I've been a freelancer the entire time, my whole career, so I've had to be versatile and be able to switch between the instruments. I think that's about it about
Yeah.
the oboe and English horn for now.
Well, the thing I love about the English horn is towards the bottom of the instrument, it bulges out a little bit.
It does.
The bottom, that's different than any of the other woodwinds. I always think it looks like it's about to lay an egg, but
I think there's a cartoon that shows it laying an egg.
yeah, wouldn't be surprised.
That's right.
I also saw a cartoon where there was a reed coming out of the instrument, but it was actually a straw. And if you look down at the bottom of the instrument, it's going into a pop bottle. So soda bottle.
You can make an oboe out of a straw. We do that for educational
So
concerts. Yeah.
wet your whistle and make music at the same time.
Right.
So this next piece I know features the English horn, which will be really interesting to hear, and alto saxophone performed by Heidi Radke, who's a professor of saxophone here at Butler University. So also one of our colleagues, and sometimes joins us with the chamber orchestra. Matthew, do you want to talk a little bit about this next piece? I think it's a partita, or this is probably from the partita.
Yeah. Yes. So upon reconnecting last year, one of the first people I contacted was Pam. Said, "Hey, Pam, I'm in town. Let's do something. Let's do you have a concert coming up? I'll write anything. I'll write it quickly." And she said, "Well, we have a woodwind concert happening at Butler on October 1st." And this was mid-September. I was like, "Oh, I'll write you something." So I wrote her something in a day and got her the score. And it was this really hard courant, which is sort of like a French dance piece, very Baroque sort of thing. And they played it amazing. I mean, they only had just a few rehearsals, if that. And
quick learners, hopefully.
it sounded amazing.
Had to do it.
It sounded amazing, and I think Heidi really, really liked it. And I think she might have been, or collectively, you guys might have had a conversation about, hey, you should do something more, maybe expand this. So I ended up expanding it for the NASA, the North American Saxophone Alliance convention in Arizona this year, actually, right before everything started shutting down. It was the start of March when it happened.
Beginning of March, yes, yep.
Right.
Heidi and I traveled to Arizona and performed it at the North American Saxophone Alliance convention. So she's a wonderful colleague. She also plays with us anytime really we need a classical saxophonist with the chamber orchestra. We don't have a saxophonist on the roster, but she's one of our regulars whenever we have a piece that calls for that. So
right. So this recording you guys are going to hear is the first movement from this set of pieces performed at Arizona, I think University of Arizona or Arizona State, I can't remember.
Arizona State, yep.
Arizona State. So this is the prelude to Partita.
Okay, again, really beautiful music, really inspiring. Um, One thing that we do quite often with the orchestra, excuse me, is perform music of living composers, which can sometimes be a rarity in an orchestra schedule. But I think that's one thing that makes the ICO stand out is the fact that, especially in the recent years since Matthew Kramer has been with us, that we've really ventured into that arena, and it's kind of put us on the map. It's very exciting to be able to bring these new works to life. Sometimes we have the composers with us. So I'm hoping maybe in the future, maybe we'll be featuring work by Matthew Bridgham here. So
You know what I think, David, what's so interesting is that the chamber orchestra in itself is really a chamber group. You know, it's part of our mission is that we're intimate. You know, we have receptions after each concert, but to see only maybe 20 or 30 people on the stage is really kind of an expanded chamber music group. So you've just seen, you know, 3 people playing or two musicians. You're able to focus on what each person is doing, and that's one of the beauties of the chamber orchestra is that, you know, each person has kind of a more individual role oftentimes in the music that we're playing. So in Terre Haute, I mean, there have been, when we play with the Contemporary Festival there, and we've been the orchestra there, I think since 2007.
yes,
So
that's
we
about
always
right.
have a composer we work with, and then there's a composition competition. But oftentimes the scoring is really smaller than even the chamber orchestra. It might be a piece for 10 or 12 players. And I know that's one of the things that audiences mention a lot is that they feel with the smaller orchestra and with chamber music performances that they are able to really focus on the musicians, kind of get to know us a little bit more personally as we're playing. So I think that's one of the joys, and it's kind of why musicians like to play chamber music outside of their full-time orchestra jobs or part-time jobs,
Oh
is to
yeah.
have that connection, you know.
Yeah. No, I enjoy playing with the chamber orchestra so much. And as a bass player, it's easy to sort of feel relegated to the background a little bit. In an orchestra, the
Right.
chamber orchestra, there's no place to hide. Everybody
That's
is,
true.
exposed. And I feel that it does really bring us close together, just like a small chamber group does.
Yeah.
Um,
And we all seem to like each other too.
oh, yeah, which is really
Most of
important
the
when you're
time.
together. A large orchestra is like a chamber group too, but it's just the size difference. Um, it's really interesting and fascinating with the smaller organization that we have. Matthew, do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about how you got into composition?
Yeah,
Not
I'd love
everybody decides they're going to be a composer.
to. Yeah, it's a weird sort of path. Um, wow, where do I begin? No, so I actually started music by chance because my mom brought home a garage sale broken down. Uh, God, I don't even know the make of it. An organ, just this broken organ. And it had a couple sheets of music in it. It had an easy version of The Entertainer by Joplin, and it had on the other side finger patterns for playing your scales.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I was about 11. And from there, doing some research online, the internet didn't have a lot of stuff. It didn't have IMSLP, which is a pretty big library, like digital library of sheet music people can access for free. Support IMSLP. It's very cheap. They do a great work. Anyways, not sponsored. So yeah, so they didn't have that, but I found some scores on there, and I started learning things on my own, and just naturally, it felt like I have something, I want to say something. I have these ideas, so I just started improvising, and a lot of it was just imitation at first, sort of like drooling over a Beethoven score that's like in C major and it has no sharps and flats. And then on the very next key, it has like all the sharps and flats, and just being like, how does this happen? It was a curiosity. And in a way, puzzles are sort of interesting. It made me feel sort of like, um, I don't know, it was just enrapturing. So I just started doing that a lot. And before you know, I had a lot of pieces and thought, hey, I should go to school for it. And UND took a chance on me. So I just want to say a special shout out to UND, special shout out to Richard Ratliff. I was a high school dropout, did not have a lot going for me, and music was the only thing really. So these educators really took a chance on me, and I'm glad that they did.
Great.
Wow.
That I mean, that's like a success story just to hear that. And I mean, the fact that you that music is kind of what steered you in that right direction. Um, I think we can all attest to that. And as educators, as well as performing musicians, how important music is just for our own gratification and success and accomplishment. And yes. Oh, and we do have a question.
Uh, yeah, so there's a question from the audience. This is from Colin to Matthew. How long does it take to compose a song from start to finish?
Oh, oh dear, how long does it take to compose a song from start to finish? It really does depend. It depends on how many instruments there are. It depends on how long they're gonna let me work on it. So sometimes, they need the piece really, really soon, or other times maybe they're asking for it in a year. So I sort of adjust my process to all those parameters. I'm a big believer in, even if someone's casually coming up to me and saying, "Hey, you should write a piece for us," I'm like, "Hey, we should figure out a date for it, and who's going to be doing it, and how long it should be, and like what kind of music do you like? What else is going to be on the concert?" And like I like to do a lot of research. Other than that, I would say, to give like a precise answer, a lot of the writing happens up here, and it's really tacky, but I like walk around and think about it a lot, and I sketch a lot, and I sing, and I play, and then most of the work is there. So then once I finally start committing it to the page, that stuff's real fast. So I think about it a lot before I end up actually writing it down. But
That's a little like Mozart. We hear the stories about Mozart composing pieces in his head and then writing, scream and rant and rave and things and throw something across the room and rewrite it. And
yeah, we're nuts.
Come on, Matthew. I was going to ask David, when did you start the bass, David?
When did I start the bass?
You're the host, but I figure we need to ask at least one question.
Turn the tables. I was 12. My father thought that I was. I had way too much energy, and my sister, though, could hold her own. She's a tough cookie. But I was, in order to channel some of that energy, my dad was like, "Okay, you're starting bass next week." And I went, "Okay." And the minute I picked it up, I had it in my hands for a minute, and I went, "This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life." I didn't know anything about it yet, but I had it in my hand, and it was the size of a person. So I thought, "This is my new best friend. We're going to continue this." And here we are.
I did not pick the oboe, not to go to me, but I just have to tell you, I played piano first, and for about 6 years. So I read music, and I started in the band program at West Lane Middle School, and I really wanted to play the flute, but they started all the woodwinds on clarinet. And because I had read music for so long and did, it was pretty natural by that point. I guess I advanced in the clarinet band, and then the band director said, "You're playing the oboe for second semester." I said, "What's that?" So I loved music, but I didn't even really know what the oboe was at that point. I'd gone to concerts, but hadn't really gotten into all the different instruments. But my first lesson was with my predecessor at Butler, Malcolm Smith, who was principal of the Indianapolis Symphony for many years. And I'm still teaching in the same studio where I took my first lesson, the same room. Yeah. So that's how that started. Not that anybody asked.
What goes around comes around. So we have one more piece, one more clip we'd like to share with everybody. Matthew, can you tell us a little bit about this? And I know the title of the piece is Partita. What is a partita exactly?
Yeah, so the better known word for a collection of short movements that have been put together is a suite. I don't know if there's any connection to like a hotel suite and how you have multiple rooms connected, but I make that connection in my life. I always think there's sort of like multiple little rooms, sort of themed rooms that you go in and out of, and they're all connected. but the word partita is a little more of an archaic word at this point. For Bach wrote 6 keyboard partitas, and really the only difference I think people notice is just that it's for a single instrument, and that the word suite can be used more. It can be used for a single instrument, or maybe an orchestral suite, like the Bach orchestral suites, which are I'm sure the ICOs played many times. So this piece, I decided to call it partita for that reason, to call back to sort of that older style of music, considering suite has become sort of a ubiquitous term. In general, a suite or a partita is just a collection of short movements. In the Baroque sense, they're dance movements. So not dubstep or any of the like, but more like an allemande or a courant or sarabande. These are uh, thematic dances based around some stereotypes. Really, at the end of the day, they're stereotypes of what a German dance is like or an Italian dance. So I ran with that. So I had written them a courant. I thought I'll write them an allemande. I'll write them a sarabande. I'll write a gigue, and I attached a prelude to it, and then called it a day. So
Great. Well, let's have a listen.
yeah. So this next piece you're going to hear is the second movement of the suite or partita, and it's called allemande.
Another great performance. Thank you again, Matthew, and thank you to Pam, and thank you to Heidi, who is not here with us today. I think we have one more question that we can answer before we're done today. Lee, can you give us that question, please?
Of course, this is from former ICO board member Scott Putney, and he asks, Matthew, I've unfortunately haven't gotten to hear enough of your music, but did hear your living room music in early March performed by the Ronin Ensemble, the last live music we heard before social distancing. It seems that the music of yours I've heard is for woodwinds. Have you written much for brass instruments?
Not enough, actually. I wrote one of the first pieces in undergrad. I wrote a piece for 2 trumpets as sort of a fanfare. I actually called it Fanfare for the Forum, and it's referencing a very obscure piece by Stravinsky, who also wrote a set of. He wrote a set or a single fanfare. He wrote a fanfare for 2 trumpets for a new theater being shown or something like that. I forget the history of it, but so that, gosh, I'm trying to think back. I think that might have been the last time I wrote for brass. So it's sort of the weird thing. You get to know people, you get to know woodwind players, and they're asking you to write woodwind music, and string players ask you to write string music, and it's just things happen. So if you know any great brass players, I'm totally open to getting to know them.
We know a few. We could
You know,
probably.
if you, okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to change my camera angle. Sorry, my sunlight is pouring in, so pardon my change of scenery.
As a composer, Matthew, you're taking commissions, I gather, right?
Always.
Okay, so good to know. Well, I think we've about reached the end of our time today. I want to thank everybody here. Pam, thank you for your oboe and English horn expertise. Matthew, thank you so much for your beautiful music. I want to thank very much Lee Clifford, who has been helping us with our technology and making this all run smoothly. Again, I'm your host, David Murray, today. I know Matthew Kramer will be back with you soon. And I would like to thank the ICO for having this whole Mocktails and Masterpieces series. I think is really fantastic. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you. Hope to see you soon at our concerts.
Yes, we do.
Bye.
Bye-bye.